What up, though, everybody? This your boy, most socially conscious one, back at you again with another video. If this is your first time stopping by my channel, please hit that subscribe button, and you will not regret it. We're gonna have fun while you're on this channel. Now, what we about to talk about today is we're gonna continue wrapping up for football season for all my football fans. And I already talked about the AFC West. I talked about the NFC West. Now we're about to talk about that NFC North Division. Home of what? Defending champion Detroit Lions. And I'm going to break down the division of all four teams. And in my opinion, the NFC North is starting to become one of the tougher divisions in NFL. In about 2 years, it will be the toughest division in NFL. Just my opinion. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, first off, we have the Detroit Lions, the defending NFC North champions. They are led by Dan Campbell, who is in his fourth season as the head coach, and Jared Goff returns at quarterback with a 4-year extension in tow. And they also have a nice 1-2 punch at the running back position with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And they have outside threats like the Sun God, Amon-Ra St. Brown, as well as Jamison Williams. And you add Donovan Peoples-Jones, Khalif Raymond, and Antoine Green, and you have a really good, talented wide receiver group. Not to mention, you have an emerging superstar tight end in Sam Laporta, and the best O-line in the NFL that's led by Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker, and Frank Ragnow. And you also have Ben Johnson returning at the OC. And this all but guarantees that the Lions will once again be lethal on offense. Now on to the defense. Starting with the defensive line where you have Aiden Hutchinson, who should this season ascend to superstardom where it comes to the edge position. And also returning are Aleem McNeil. And to pair along with him, they signed DJ Reader from the Bengals. And they also signed Marcus Davenport to play opposite Aiden Hutchinson. And they got depth within the D line. And at the linebacker position, you have Derek Barnes, Alex Anzalone, and the second year, Jack Campbell, who I think should make a leap this year. And they also re-signed Jalen Reeves-Maybin, who mostly on special teams, but he plays some time at the linebacker position. And they also have Rodrigo Malcolm Rodriguez. And let's go to the defensive backfield. That should be much improved after it was mostly aligned last season. And they acquired Carlton Davis III from the Buccaneers. And they signed Amik Robinson from the Raiders. And also they drafted Terrion Arnold. And they drafted Ennis Rakestraw to help bolster that quarterback room. In the safeties, they have Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, and the Fitu Melifonwu. They lost Josh Reynolds, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and Jonah Jackson to free agency, in which the latter was replaced by Kevin Zeitler on the offensive line. Now, let's talk about the games. The games include rematches in the first two games at home versus the Rams and the Buccaneers, respectively. Then they have a road encounter with the Cardinals in week 3, followed by a Monday night showdown with the Seahawks, and then a bye week. And then after that bye week, back-to-back road games at Dallas, punk-ass Cowboys, and the Vikings. And after that, they have a home game versus Tennessee and another back-to-back road games at Green Bay and at Houston. That makes 4 road games in the next 5 games after that bye week. Then they have home game versus the Jags in the road game at Indy. That's soon to be followed by 3 consecutive home games, which will be a Thanksgiving showdown with the Bears, as well as a Thursday night showdown a week later against the Packers. And they have the Bills after that. And then the last 3 games included the December road clash in Chicago against the pesky ass Bears. and the NFC Championship game rematch at San Francisco, and a home game versus the Vikings to close out the season. Now, we all know how talented this Lions team is. We saw a glimpse of it last year as they were inches away from getting to the Super Bowl. Don't mean that literally, but you know what I'm getting at. My point is this: they will be better this year. Expect for them to win the division. I have the Lions win the NFC North for the second straight year. Stand by for my predictions on their record. Next up, we had the Green Bay Packers, and their head coach is Matt LaFleur. And LaFleur is one of the top coaches in the game right now as we speak. And they are returning Jordan Love. He is heading into his second year being the starter. And they also signed Josh Jacobs to replace Aaron Jones and also have A.J. Dillon to form a running back tandem. And they have Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, and Jaden Reed to form a wide receiver trio and two talented tight ends in Luke Musgrave and Tucker Craft. O-line is young as they lost David Bakhtiari and drafted his replacement Jordan Morgan out of Arizona. And they have a really good D-line with edge rushers Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary, and a linebacker with potential in Quay Walker. They have a defensive backfield that may be the best in the division, led by Jair Alexander and Eric Stokes on the other side, with Javon Ballard and Xavier McKinney, and can't forget about Keyshawn Nixon, who is a talented and dangerous return man. And they released Devondre Campbell during the offseason to go along with releasing David Bakhtiari and Aaron Jones. And now let's talk about this schedule. Schedule includes a neutral game to start the season versus the Eagles in Brazil, and they have a home opener in week 2 versus the Colts. Then they have a week 3 road game at Tennessee before returning home rather for a division matchup versus the Vikings. That is within the first 4 games, and then the next 4 games includes home games versus Arizona and Houston, and road games at the Rams and SoFi, and at Jacksonville take on the Jags. Then they host division rival Detroit at Lambeau before their bye week and and their final 8 games include 4 home games versus the Niners, Dolphins, Saints, and Bears, and road games at all divisional foes, including a Thursday night tilt with the Lions at Ford Field later on during the season, and they have a road game with the Seahawks. Looking at all their games, the Packers are young. They are a great team. I'm not gonna lie, they on the cusp of being Super Bowl contenders, but they're a year away from that. However, I find themselves as a wild card team once again. Next team up are the Minnesota Vikings, who are coached by Kevin O'Connell, who is entering into his 3rd season as the head coach. And at the quarterback position, they have signed Sam Darnold to replace Kirk Cousins, who is signed by the Falcons during the offseason. And they have also drafted J.J. McCarthy, the young stud QB out of the University of Michigan, in which he have had a hand in helping win the Natty. And I'm not just calling him a stud because he played for my Wolverines, go blue, but I do believe he does have the ceiling to become that quarterback of the future for the Vikings. And at the running back position, you have Aaron Jones, who has signed with the Vikings after being released from the Packers. And he is a upgrade from Alexander Madison, in my opinion. And also at the wide receiver position, you have arguably the best wide receiver in the game, and one Justin Jefferson, also known as the Jets. And you have an excellent number 2 in Jordan Addison. And they also have some wide receivers that could produce. And if Jalen Naylor become healthy, he could become that great third option. And we cannot forget about T.J. Hawkinson, who is still one of the best tight ends of the game when healthy. and he could light up any defense if they're not careful. And also at the O line, they're kind of young in the at parts, but they still have Christian Darisaw, and they also have Garrett Bradbury in the middle. Garrett Bradbury in the middle, and Christian Darisaw proving he can anchor an offensive line. And now the defense, now they have new faces in that defense as they lost Neil Hunter to the Texans during the off season. But they did sign Jonathan Bullard, linebacker Jonathan Greenard, and also linebacker Blake Cashman. And also they signed another linebacker. I forgot his name. Let me know in the comments. And they drafted Dallas Turner out of Alabama to replace Daniil Hunter. That's a great pickup for them. Now, the defensive backfield, they still have Harrison Smith, the always dependable safety who's been with the Vikings for a while. And they also are returning Byron Murphy Jr. and Shaquille Griffin. And they have a pretty good nickel in Josh Metellus. Now let's talk about their games. Their games include a week 1 road game at the Giants, followed by back-to-back home games versus San Francisco and Houston, respectively. Then they have a road divisional matchup at Lambeau versus the Packers. Then they will fly all the way to the UK to play a neutral game versus the old nemesis and Aaron Rodgers as he lead the Jets into battle. And then the bye week comes up, and then after that bye week, they have a home game versus the defending NFC North champion Lions. And then after that, Thursday night game at SoFi, where they play against the Rams. And that is followed by a November that, aside from a week 9 home game versus the Colts, the rest of the games will be on the road, and they will have road games at Jacksonville, Tennessee, and then the Shy to face the Bears. And that will be a road division game. Now, the first 3 Sundays in December, however, those will be home games versus the Cardinals, Falcons, and the same Bears for a home division game. And to close out the season, the final 3 games are at Seattle, at home versus Green Bay, and they'll finish off at the Lions in Ford Field. Now, my outlook on the Vikings is they have a feeling of an 8-9, 9-18, and I just gave you the records. I shouldn't have done that, but that's my feelings on the Vikings. Last but not least, we have the Chicago Bears, who are coached by Matt Eberflus, who is entering the 3rd season on the hot seat. I may add, he must make something happen in the shot, or he is done. And at the quarterback position, they have drafted young Caleb Williams out of USC to replace Justin Fields, who was traded to Pittsburgh for a 6th-round pick. Ouch. And at the running back position, they have signed DeAndre Swift during the offseason, and they will pair him with Khalil Herbert, a nice young running back in the backfield. And at the wide receiver position, they are returning DJ Moore, who just signed an extension, and they will pair him with the newly signed Keenan Allen, who was released by the Chargers during the offseason, and they have drafted a young wide receiver out of Washington, Rome Odunze, and that will be a nice wide receiver trio that the young rookie quarterback Caleb Williams can work with. And let's talk about the tight ends. The talented Cole Kmet, who is definitely need to be respected. And they also have 2 veterans in Gerald Everett and the respectable Mercedes Lewis. And the O-line, they're young, but they do have the anchor and right tackle Darnell Wright. Now let's talk about the defense. The defense has they definitely had their share of studs, starting with Montez Sweat, the top edge rusher in the league. And they also have linebackers TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edwards, no relation. And let's talk about the defensive backfield. And they have their share of ball hawks and Jalen Johnson and Tariq Stevenson at the corner spots. They have Jaquan Brister and Kevin Byard the third. And if you think about it, they have pretty much a tough defensive backfield. Them and Green Bay have the top defensive backfields. Detroit should be better. We would definitely see. I'm pretty sure that will be better. Minnesota's that's waiting to see. But moving along, they did lose Eddie Jackson. I'm not sure who else they lost. You can fill me in the comments. Now let's talk about their game. Their game, the first game will be a home matchup versus the Titans, followed back followed by back-to-back road games at Houston and Indy, and they will have a home game versus the Rams in the first 4 weeks. That home game with LA is the first back-to-back game at home, with the other home game being versus Carolina, and they will have a neutral game versus the Jags in England. A bye week will come after that neutral game, and they will have back-to-back road games at Commanders and at Arizona. And that's followed by 3 consecutive home games with the Patriots and 2 division games, Packers and Vikings. They're both at Soldier Field. And they have 3 straight road games, starting with the Thanksgiving game at Ford Field versus the Lions. Then they will have a road game at the Niners in Santa Clara. And then they have a road game, another divisional road game at the Vikings. After that, to close out the season, 2 home games versus the Lions and Seahawks, and a road game at Lambeau of Green Bay. Now, when I think about this Bears team, they could finish anywhere from 6 wins to go as high as 8 wins, and they had the talent. They could do some damage, and the other 3 teams in the division not careful, they could strike you on any given Sunday. And I have to give my hats off with credit due to Chicago. Ryan Pace has done a great job, but nonetheless, they'll still finish last. All right, after breaking out all 4 teams in the division, here are my predictions. I have the Detroit Lions repeating as NFC North champions at 12-5, 13-4 range. I have the Green Bay Packers finishing second, and they will end up with the wild card yet again at 11-6. And third, I have Minnesota Vikings around 8-9, 9-8 range. Last but not least, I have the Chicago Bears 7-10, 8-9. If you agree or disagree, leave your comments down below. If you like this video, hit that like button. And if you like what I have to offer so far, subscribe to my channel. There's more to come. Until then, I'll meet y'all up next time with the AFC North. Till then, take care.